It appears that retail workers have finally had enough and are leaving their jobs in record numbers. Now, I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I'm saying that is a good thing because I am absolutely here for it. Because following a pandemic, which closed the economy, kind of, and ended up killing 600,000 Americans, many of them in retail or fast food jobs, which were very dangerous as they had to deal with anti maskers, Trump supporters, rude customers, which really, I'm kind of being redundant here because many of them had a lot of crossover, those groups. But the numbers here of people quitting their jobs from retail are amazing. In fact, some 649,000 retail workers have put in their notices in April, the industry's largest 1 month exodus since the Labor Department began tracking data more than 20 years ago. And some 3.5 million people left the workforce since last year at this time. There were, of course, retirements, a mix of different things, of course. Retirements, the fact that, a lot of people wanted to stay home with their families, or they're still concerned about the pandemic. But many of those who had left those old jobs actually went to better jobs. So, and what this ends up resulting in is, at least for those industries that are most affected, again, restaurants, hospitality, fast food, things like that. This is what essentially ends up being like a general strike, like a mini general strike, a bit of a rebellion against the corporate class, if you will, which has been screwing over low wage workers for decades. And I think this is fantastic. So now a lot of workers, despite being called back, or I'm sorry, being called essential, never got a permanent pay raise as a result. Yeah, there were some, minor benefits or things like that that were temporary. Oh, we got a heroes bonus, which was quickly taken away. And they ended up, of course, having to deal with a lot of bullshit, no benefits, no health care, still low pay. The aforementioned Trump supporters, they either left the workforce or, again, found another better job. And in fact, according to the Washington Post, some are finding less stressful positions at insurance companies, marijuana dispensaries, banks, and local governments, where their customer service skills were rewarded with, and this is important, higher wages and better benefits. It turns out, and CNN just earlier today had a video where there was a guy who owns an ice cream company or an ice cream stand, whatever. And he's like, yeah, oh boy, I was paying $7.25 the minimum wage, and nobody wanted to work for me. It was weird. And then I raised the wage to $15 an hour, and suddenly everybody wanted to work for me. Oh, I couldn't imagine. Wow. Who would have known? Who would have known? You pay people better, and they'll come work for you. Now, other people, instead of going to different jobs, maybe they went to go back to school to learn new trades or were waiting to secure reliable childcare. In fact, one person's 23-year-old Aislinn Potts of Tennessee, who left her $11 an hour job as a specialist at a pet chain in April to focus on writing. She said, quote, "It was a really dismal time, and it made me realize this isn't worth it. My life isn't worth a dead-end job." I'm here for it. Hell yes. I love it. There's more. In interviews with more than a dozen retail workers who recently left their jobs, nearly all of them said the pandemic introduced new strains and already challenging work. Longer hours, understaffed stores, unruly customers, and pay cuts. Christina Knowles spent much of her time working the closing shift at a dollar store, sometimes 9 consecutive days without a break for $10 an hour. She felt isolated, anxious, and demoralized. Chris Oberlin, who sold electronics at a national chain store in San Antonio, took a $4 an hour pay cut during the pandemic before deciding to quit to do another job. He said to be getting paid $10 an hour in the middle of a nationwide crisis, it just left a sour taste. Now I'm doing more physical labor, but it's better pay and I'm having a lot more fun without the stresses of retail. It feels better mentally. Another person quit his job at a liquor store to become a firefighter The 29-year-old who has a degree in geography and environmental studies took on retail work in March when most people were not hiring. As the pandemic wore on, he felt increasingly anxious about getting sick during shifts, sometimes double or triple masking. When he found in early May that he hadn't been informed when a close colleague tested positive for the virus, he quit on the spot. Quote, I kept working because I had to pay bills, but it was never going to be a long-term job. So yeah, look, again, these people knew they were being underpaid, underappreciated, and it was very, very clear that these places didn't give a damn about their workers, about regular people. Add in the fact that, of course, the nation's 15 million retail workers have no reliable childcare, no reliable public transportation, and it really limits your options to go back to work or work for a place that, honestly, you work at a place that, with the level of how much it costs for childcare, and you work at a place that gives you $10 an hour. I mean, come on. That doesn't even cover your childcare. Why would you even work? What's the point? So these are just terrible jobs overall. And Rebecca Gevin, a professor of labor studies and employment relations at Rutgers, said it much better than me. Quote, we're seeing a wider understanding that these were never good jobs and they were never livable jobs. In many cases, the pay is below a living wage and the hours are inconsistent and insufficient. If anything, the pandemic has made retail jobs even less sustainable than they already were. 100%. 100%. This is why you see all these places suddenly raising their wages, which they could have always done, but they didn't. Then you have the ridiculous offers of, oh, we're going to give you a one-time signing bonus. You can have free lunches, pizza parties, appetizers. Everybody sees right through it. It's absolutely pathetic. People, let me tell you what people want. People want to be treated well. They want to have stable, reliable hours, and they want to be paid fairly. And they want benefits too. I know, crazy, right? But labor experts agree. Retailers, they say, should be focusing on stable schedules, safe working conditions, benefits like paid sick leave and vacation time, and all of that. And again, as I mentioned, pay. During the pandemic, they said many employees were also forced to take on new responsibilities, often without proper protection or adequate healthcare coverage to protect them from illness. That's another issue here. We've got to have a national healthcare system, single payer healthcare. We should not be counting on employers to provide that healthcare because they won't. They've refused to do that. And we should have learned that during this pandemic. Not only that, but also, though customers were mindful of safety restrictions early on, workers say that quickly faded, leaving them vulnerable to verbal and sometimes physical altercations over social distancing and mask requirements. These people are getting paid $7 to $10 an hour to deal with people punching them, kicking them, assaulting them, ripping off their masks when they don't have health care. That's not their job. That's not their job. They don't get paid enough for that shit. I remember hearing about like my wife being in the grocery store. She came home and she told me this story. And she watched one of these situations play out where a man was literally threatening employees because they asked him to wear a mask. It ended up getting violent and he got kicked out of the store. Now, afterwards, my wife went to the employees and said, hey, are you okay? Are you doing all right? You're doing good work. That guy was an idiot. And she's a sweetheart. But it shows you, and that's just my anecdote, obviously, but I've also showed you videos. I've talked about poor tipping. I've talked about masculine harassment, where people would go in and decide, or they would tell people, take off your mask, or I'll go to your manager, or, take off your mask so I know how much to tip you. They put up with so much during the pandemic, and it's not over. Pandemic isn't over. There's still the Delta variant going around. Only 44% of Americans are vaccinated right now, so we're not even going to hit the goal. And now everybody's opening up. Everybody thinks that, oh, you can't wear a mask. You don't need to wear a mask anymore. And now you've got people shooting up stores and restaurants. No, of course it's not worth it. No job was worth that. And of course, the conservative Democrat and Republican answer to this is, well, that's okay. We'll just cut unemployment benefits. We'll just cut them off. So be forced to go back to these crap jobs. No, the whole point is you should pay people more. This isn't a labor shortage. It's the result of crushing workers into the dirt for so long that they're tired of it. And they just want to get paid more and actually want to get some respect for doing their jobs. And that's it. I hope that this changes our view of labor as a culture. Really. Because you can see now that workers are finally beginning to realize that they have a power, that they have a voice, and that they can shut down an economy if they want to, if they just refuse to go to work. And I hope that they realize that they have this power and that they can make a change. Don't count on a politician to make that change for you. You've got to press the issue by using your own power. And our workers and our labor is the biggest power that we have. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.